This came out perfect. I absolutely love it. The only problem, so I guess it's not perfect, it's close to perfect, is it's a medium. I do not wear a medium. So I'm going to have to digitize the pattern and enlarge it in a couple of places here and there. And it's occurred to me that I know quite a few people who make patterns. Most of them don't know how to digitize the thing. So I figure we take a couple minutes, go through the process, and I'll show you how I digitize something. So let me get everything set up and we'll take it from there. I have my cutting mat on the floor, my pattern on the floor, and I have a chair. Well, it's not a chair, it's a step stool. All I do is I lay the first piece down. We're going to go with the back. The back looks good. My cutting mat has a grid on it, and this wouldn't work without a grid. I need that 1-inch grid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this as close to on that line, well, we'll go into the second line, as possible. I want to give myself about 1 inch to 2 inches all the way around. I'm going to do that with all the pieces. That's just how it gets done. Line the step stool up with the pattern, climb all the way up. Camera. And I want to move as close as I can so I get the whole thing. I do that with all of the pieces. So there we go. Took pictures of everything. That's it, right? We're done. Now there's a heck of a lot more work to do before we even consider us close to done. At this point, we're going to jump over the computer, transfer all the files, make a folder, do all that kind of stuff, and then we will pick it up on the screen here. Let's start with Photoshop. I tend to bring in everything all at once. I find it's just easier. So I load all the photos and just let them come in. I have an older computer, so this is going to take it a couple of minutes. So that everything's loaded in, let's start on this one. I tend to crop it so it's closer. And I'll rotate it to make it easier to see. I bring over a guide, and if you see, it's not straight and in line. It's expected that I'm gonna have to edit things a little bit here. So I just select everything, and then I rotate the whole picture until the longest line is in line with whatever guide I'm using. Luckily, this one isn't too bad. Sometimes if you're at a weird angle, the sides will scallop weird, and then there's more work to do. That'll be the next one. This one's pretty easy. So this one's just line everything up, and then crop as is. And again, the nice part about being on the grid is I know exactly what size to make the image. So I'm going to go to image and image size. And in this one, I believe it's 5 by... And I'm counting squares because that's the whole point. So 5 by 9 at 300 DPI. Or 300 resolution. Same thing. Then I'm just going to rotate it and save, since that one's super easy to do. It's a small piece. The smaller the piece, the easier it is to get things in line. And I just save it,
I fight with Photoshop for a minute and close. That's all there is for this one. This was the easiest one. The next one's not so much. So this is one where I've actually had to manipulate, because if you look, I grab my angle of rotation, I put it in the corner here, and then I just rotate the whole thing so the longest line is in line with my my guideline. Then I'm going to crop, bring it in closer. I've been using Photoshop for a really long time, so most of this is second nature to me. But when you have a thing selected and you're in your manipulation tool, let's pull that up real quick. So I select everything and then pull in my guides. So I've got to put 4 guides in, of course, because there's 4 corners to a thing. So, and then I have up on the edit, there's this little bitty thing, the top corner there, that lets you move individual corners. And then there's just sliders to put everything in line. So I'm just making everything line up with the guides I just put down. I pull the top corners down a little bit and out here and there, and that's it. I use the angles to make sure there's not a weird belly to it, or to straighten it if there is one. So let me show you that again on the sleeves, because the sleeves have a little more of an issue. So the first thing I do, since they're large enough I don't need to zoom in any, I'm just going to put down a couple of guides. Well, I'm going to put down a guide first off. You always want to use the longest line possible. So making a nice even corner to work off of. I Control A to select all. Move my area of rotation, which is a little dot in the middle, to the bottom corner. Making the long line parallel with the guide. Setting up the top guide and the bottom guide. And I found the fastest way to do this is just to move things over, push and pull until everything lines up where you want it to. This one I was a little more worried about, because the more you manipulate a photo, the more likely everything is to not line up as an actual, inch grid. This one wasn't bad. The whole reason I do this like this is so when I manipulate things, everything lines up perfect. So at this point I just bring out my cropping tool and I use my guides as an edge. It'll snap to it pretty easy. So now if you look, I have to resize the image. Again, I gotta count everything because, there we go. But all the 1 inches line up pretty well along the top. The sides kind of pucker a little bit. Everything's distorted just a little bit to the up, but that's only like maybe a 1/16 of an inch. So yeah, it's good enough. If I wanted, I could resize the image first and then push and pull and make sure it was exact. Not a big deal. So now we move into Inkscape. Since I have everything brought in. Inkscape I would prefer CorelDRAW, but Inkscape is a free alternative, so I'm not going to argue with free. So I just import the images as soon as I find it. There it is. We're going to start with the sleeve again since we were just working on it anyway. Let the image import. I had noticed I was in millimeters, so I do switch everything over to inches back in a few seconds. There's nothing wrong with millimeters, but you know. So the first thing I do is I open up my layer and I add however many different grades of shirt I want. At this point, I think I'm doing 3. I'm doing a medium, large, and an extra large. Just because I like having options. Extra large. And then I change the base layer to, base. At some point in time, I do add a 4th layer, which is just, I think, info, which is where I'm putting all my arrows and my text and things like that. Make sure the image is on my base layer. I tend to lock the image so I don't have to mess with it too much. I want the orientation to be at 0, 0, or the start coordinates to be 0, 0. That way, everything I'm doing is equidistant for inches. I lock the object. I move to my medium layer. So what I'm using is just the brazier, the weird pen with the lines, and I'm just putting points on the top, the bottom of the bell, and then along the cuff. And then I connect everything to make one big box. Well, I guess it's not a box, it's 5-sided. Then you go to edit your points, you click whichever one you want first, and you make it curve. That gives you 2 handles. I just bend those till everything lines up where I want it to be. And the nice thing about this is I can fix all of the weird, just rough hand cut of it. So I click the line or the 2 dots, and then I just push and pull everything to be where I want it to be. Then I mess with it for a while to make sure everything is symmetrical and the center point is in the center point, and you know, it's not a big deal. It's time consuming. I like making sure all of my handles are at the same location. I'll bring guides down and line everything up, and then it's just a matter of pushing and pulling until everything is the same. I could have put a line down the center and then put 2 of them and flip it, but you know, I didn't. One of the nice things about Inkscape is those numbers up on top are coordinates, and if I want things to be exactly here and exactly there, I just type in where I want the points to be, and everything matches. So at this point, I have pushed everything to be where I want it to be. And then I'm playing with text. The hardest part for me is finding a font that I feel fits the suit the best, or the project the best. I spend way too much time making sure all of my text is easy to read for me. The nice thing is, with the amount of free fonts out there, you can always find something that lasts. Something that fits. But it does take forever to scroll through. A lot of fonts. That was close, because the Fullmetal Alchemist logo is just this blocky serif font. I'm not going to match like color or anything like that, because my printer just prints black and white anyway. But I am going to at least try to look the part. I believe this is the one I end up sticking with for all of it. So, having done merch for a really long time, I have a couple of rules I tend to stick to on my stuff. I try not to have more than 2 fonts. 3 is really pushing it because then it gets just kind of hard to read. So I try to stick around with 2. And if one of them is a serif, the other one should be a sans serif. A serif just means it's got those little points like the T, how it's got the 2 arms that go down at the top. Sans serifs don't have that, like Arial. Arial's probably my choice sans serif font. It's just easier to read. You don't want too much going on because, you know, in the end it's about conveying the message you want. More than just looking pretty. So I end up monkeying with fonts for a little while at this point. So now I copy everything into the next layer. So I copy my whole medium into the large layer, and then I just add in. I know I want 1 inch in the sleeves, and then 2 in the length. So I just kind of selected the 2 points on the end and made them 1 inch farther over. And I did the same thing with the bottom and 2 down. And then I just center it. I feel that's a little faster than trying to redraw everything or trying to go from the center out. It's always easier just to make it however long you want and then move it over. And then I paste it again in the extra large. I lock the oh, I don't know what that's all about. I forgot I had the layer locked for a couple of seconds here. I lock that one, unlock this one, and then I hit a paste again. The thing about Inkscape is wherever the center of your piece is, and if you hit paste, it's wherever the center is for your cursor. So you want to put it about wherever, you know, where do you want it to be. Most people think you just enlarge to go from medium to large. That's not how it works really. It's a real specific number to get things to properly flow, because it's like with the front. In a minute you'll see, because we'll bring up the I believe the back. I had snapping on for some reason, and it did not want to work with me. Constant arguing with that stupid program. Right about here I realized, oh wait, I mathed wrong, and I made 1/2 inch instead of 1 inch. So it's way more complicated for grading. It's not just I need to make this 10% larger to go from a medium to a large. Bodies aren't really proportional like that. I know how much I want my larges to be larger than my extra larges. I just been doing this a real long time, so it's easy for me to know and just put this stuff in there. It really is a trial and error kind of thing. And I tend to put, if I'm doing multiple sizes like this, I always want to make sure the text is readable and accessible. So at the base of each of the sleeves, I put the size, so it cuts through the middle of the line. And then I put the stroke I make white, so it's a separation. I want the fill to be black, the stroke to be white. And then I make the stroke probably too big, I think, in this one. I just want a slight separation in between the line that I'm going over and the word itself. Just, I think it's easier to read that way. Luckily, I only have to do this once, and then I just copy and paste onto each of the other layers and just change the words. And once that's done, you know, you only have to do it once. Luckily, you can just copy and paste. Of course, I could have taken all these assets from one of my other patterns. I didn't even think of that. I was like, no, I have to do this now. And then I put it on the wrong line because I resized my image for some weird reason, and I put it on the image size, and then instead of hitting some key, I hit Control S. Like, all right, well, here, might as well save it. So there are all the sizes, just lined up on the sleeves. I keep them on each, like the large is on the large and the medium's on the medium for a really long time before I just create a whole new folder and just, you know, move it over. I think this is the point where I'm like, this is stupid. And I add a info. And line everything up. I could have made the text itself larger, but I think for the smaller pieces, that's because I like keeping the size consistent for my fonts. And I add an arrow for the grain of the fabric. And I spent way too long making that arrow. Again, it would have been way easier just to bring that asset in from something else. But I wasn't really thinking. I just wanted to get it done, and it's always easier just to go, no. So I'm going to grab everything. I'm going to grab the whole arrow. I'm going to group it together as one thing. That way I don't have to constantly fight with it. And there are my 3 sleeve sizes, the medium, large, and extra large. Turned out pretty nice. And as usual, save your art. So now I have this saved as a sleeve, and I could have just left it there, and then done each piece individual, but I thought it would be better to put everything all on one big thing and just be done with it. So we're going to walk through the process again on the... So I've imported the back piece. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the sleeve on the for the back. So I'm going to start with the brazier tool. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right layer. And I'm just going to put a couple of points everywhere there's a turn. I've always felt the less points you can use in your patterns, the smoother it's going to look when you're done with everything. So I connect the box, I go to the edit points. And this is when I wanted to make sure that everything was lined up properly. Because if you look, we're at 23 and a quarter, and it just didn't seem right. So I wanted to make it 0, and because it makes everything else line up so much easier. Usually when I'm doing this, I will try and outline as close to the actual pattern as possible, and then start editing things. But not always. There's something to be said for starting from exact coordinates. And I'm only focusing on the parts I can see right now. We'll make everything else, something else later. But this is a real easy way to make sure that my corners are 90 degrees, my edges are nice and crisp, and where I want them to be. And it's just a push and pull to get everything to where you want it. In the end, the product I have, I'm super happy with. I absolutely love the pattern I've drafted. It just takes me a while to get there. And it seems overtly complicated. It's really, really not. Right? It's all just curves. As soon as you understand how the curves work, everything else just kind of flows and falls into place. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. I'm just trying to replicate something I saw on screen. That's it. And then I just line everything up. I'm very happy with that. I believe I end up changing the line thickness a little bit, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. Here we go. 0.2. Nope. So now I've copied it onto the large. Now here's the perfect example of why you can't just enlarge and make it work right. Because I move everything over an inch, because I want an inch in the back. But that makes the neck an inch bigger too, and the neck was perfect. So instead of making the neck an inch over, I take the whole shoulder seam and move it back half an inch. So it's just a little bigger. But I still keep the full inch around the ribs. So I just select multiple points, and you do that by holding down the shift key. In Inkscape, it's a little weird, but I just manually moved it. Never mind. And I've been doing this long enough. I just do most of the stuff by eye. I also wanted to add an inch on the bottom, because I don't want it too long, because it's supposed to be a crop top jacket. There are charts out there that give you exact measurements on how to grade your shirt or jacket or whatever it is you're trying to grade. You could also just pull up a sizing chart, and it goes, small is this, a medium is this, a large is this, and then just make your measurements off of that too. Pattern making isn't nearly as complicated as a lot of people make it out to be. But to be fair, it is an exact science. I mean, there are charts and diagrams and formulas on how to do just about all of this stuff. But back to the project at hand here. I'm just trying to make sure everything lines up properly. And then I'm going to paste it on the extra large and do the exact same thing. I'm going to move it over an inch, down an inch, and then move the neck so it's only a half inch. Luckily, there's a move node by, which will let me know exactly when I hit 1 inch. So I know I'm 1 inch over and 1 inch down. But here you can really see how gradation changes, whether you're and why just adding a percentage size bigger won't work. The bodies are built weird, and it's no more relevant than, or no more evident than when you're looking at clothes. I was really happy with how that one turned out too. And then I'm just going to copy and paste all the text. I do end up changing it from grain to fold. Because, yeah, I don't... Grain on the back is... As long as you put it on the fold, your grain will always be right. I shouldn't say always. And then this gets changed to 1. Because I have a different... lining setup than this, and this is where I'm changing grain to fold. And if you've done enough patterning and all of this, you're gonna be like, well, yeah, of course you do that. Why wouldn't you do that? Then I mess with this stupid arrow again for way longer than I should, trying to figure out how I want to turn it, and in the end I just turn the whole thing 90 degrees and move these 2 points. Still have snapping on apparently. Oh my goodness, it's frustrating sometimes. Inkscape is not nearly as intuitive as CorelDRAW. Of the two, I absolutely love CorelDRAW more, but Inkscape is free. Yeah, so here we are using Inkscape. I'm a big fan of trying to make everything look as professional as possible. So here I'm just going to copy and paste that arrow and then make it a negative for its height. And just add a minus, and that's a fast way to flip it. I mean, I'm sure there's buttons that'll do the exact same thing just as quick, but, you know, that's how I do it. That's how I roll. I'm going to group everything. Layers and groups are probably the most important but underused thing that you can do in any form of digital media. Whether you're making this or working on trading cards, or layers and groups, I would be lost without them. And then I'm going to copy over the images, or the sizing. And again, I do it on each individual layer. I don't know why I did that. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. But, hey, whatever helps you sleep at night, right? So this is the whole thing when it's done. I have to print it out, and I'm probably going to change the coloring a little bit. Just a little. Because, sizing and everything. But I have it printed out so I can measure everything and make sure that it all fits properly. Because in the end, that's what matters.
And that's how I digitize the pattern. It's not difficult. A couple of programs that take a little getting used to. I use Photoshop, I use Inkscape, and I have a camera. That's all it takes. Photoshop's even, you can probably do all of it in Inkscape. It's not difficult. It's a nice little break from standard content, just to show you something a little more interesting. I know I didn't go super deep into the weeds on it. There's lots you can do, because learning how to grade a shirt, how to grade anything actually, knowing the fact that it's called grading instead of sizing, because you pull up sizes, it'll give you the size chart, which is really useful if you're making your own patterns. But to understand grading it's a whole nother, just into the weeds on the whole thing. It's crazy. I've been doing this a long time, so I don't really use grading charts anymore. I just kind of go, well, I know I want this here, I want that there. I printed it out. It looks pretty cool. Look at this. 37 sheets of paper. It's a big pattern. I wanted to make sure I printed it just like anybody else. That way I can make sure all of my crinkles are in the way. So I can make sure all of my angles and sizes stayed correct. And they did. And I'm very happy with it. So the next in this project will be to cut this out, because I'm using this pattern now, just to prove that it works to myself, is to cut out the large and then go full scale. And I got 4 of them. Oh my goodness. 3 of them, me, Faith, and Julia, are all going to have large patterns. Mine are going to be long. The other 2 are going to be much shorter because they're smaller. But I want to make it's a jacket, so it's got to have room. And Kim has a couple of things that make a whole new pattern. I'm gonna have to make hers completely from scratch. But that's a whole nother project for a whole nother day. This is the kind of thing you're into. You know, we do weird stuff. We have fun. Maybe like and subscribe. If not, thanks for making it to the end. See you next time.